Welcome to Star Watch Now, your front row seat to all the hottest gossip, drama, and breaking news from the world of entertainment. If it's trending, shocking, or star-studded, we're covering it. Stay tuned. You won't want to miss what's coming next. What if one promise, whispered past midnight, could shatter silence, defy the odds, and leave even the one it was made for speechless? In a world where fame fades fast and loyalty is often a performance, Xiao Zhan did something so intimate, so quietly powerful, that even Wang Yibo, the man closest to him, had no words. This is not just another celebrity story. It's a moment that made an entire nation pause. And it all began at 12:17 a.m. Under the sterile theater of lights and echoes of performance, there was a night no one expected. A night that began with fatigue, but ended with a vow so private, so deeply human, it would never appear in headlines, yet linger in countless hearts. After a late rehearsal and days of unrelenting pressure, Wang Yibo collapsed. Sudden, quiet, and terrifying. The world around him blurred into motion. Calls, sirens, medical orders. But beside him, Xiao Zhan remained unervingly still. There was no script for what came next. No team to manage the moment. Just Xiao Zhan, faced with fear in its rawest form. As doctors rushed Yibo into emergency care, a nurse overheard him say something barely audible, almost like a prayer rather than a sentence. "I'll be here, all night, no matter what." That was it, no fanfare, no dramatics. Just a quiet promise spoken into chaos. And true to his word, he stayed. For hours he sat without moving. No phone in hand, no distraction. Only silence, and the persistent hope that Yibo would wake up. That this moment wouldn't be the end, but perhaps a new beginning. Witnesses described him not as a celebrity, but as someone entirely stripped of status. Just a man in a hallway, waiting for someone he couldn't bear to lose. What Xiao Zhan made that night wasn't a pact for show. It was something real, forged not from fame, but from fear, loyalty, and the kind of love that asks for nothing in return. And though no one saw when he made that promise, everyone would come to feel its weight in the hours and years that followed. The hours that followed were not measured in time, but in heartbeats and held breaths. As Wang Yibo lay unconscious, tangled in wires and the cold hush of machines, Xiao Zhan sat quietly beside him, becoming part of the silence, part of the room itself. The world outside continued its relentless pace. Fans speculated, cameras blinked, life moved on. But in that small hospital room, time stood still. He didn't leave, not even once. Nurses came and went, offering food, urging him to rest. But Xiao Zhan refused with a quiet shake of his head. His gaze never left Yibo. Occasionally, he would adjust the blanket, reach for a damp cloth to cool his forehead, or gently whisper words that no one else could hear. There was no one to perform for.
No lens, no espatlast.
And yet, what unfolded in those hours was the purest performance of all. The unwavering devotion of someone who had chosen to stay. A security guard on night shift would later say, "It was like watching a man hold back a storm with silence." Xiao Zhan didn't cry aloud. His eyes spoke everything. Fear, hope, exhaustion, and a determination that couldn't be broken. In a world where love is often shouted, displayed, proven through grand gestures and staged declarations, this was different. This was quiet love. A presence that did not need to be announced. Those hours became a test of endurance, not just physical but emotional. Xiao Zhan's vigil wasn't about heroism. It was about something more elemental, the simple yet staggering act of not leaving. And in that act, without speaking a word, he gave Wang Yibo the greatest gift anyone could offer. The certainty that he was not alone. It was a moment never meant to be seen. A quiet fragment of the night, captured not by intention, but by the indifferent lens of a hallway security camera. Yet what it recorded became something more than surveillance. It became proof of a bond the world had only guessed at, whispered about, but never truly understood. At 2:47 a.m., Xiao Zhan was seen sitting by Wang Yibo's bedside, shoulders slumped from exhaustion, but still alert, still present. He reached out slowly, brushing a few strands of hair from Yibo's forehead with a tenderness that felt almost sacred. The world didn't pause for this gesture. No flashbulbs, no stage, no crowd. But in that subtle motion, a story unfolded. He adjusted the blanket, then leaned in, pressing a hand gently over Yibo's, his lips moving softly, perhaps in comfort, perhaps in prayer. There was no awareness of the camera, no calculation, no vanity. Just a man stripped of everything but his need to care. One of the nurses later said, "It was as if he thought no one was watching, and that's what made it so powerful. He wasn't performing. He was feeling." In that fleeting minute of footage, the world saw something incredibly rare: devotion without demand, love without conditions. It wasn't romantic in the way cinema tells us love should be. It was human, raw, and startling in its quiet intensity. That clip would circulate far beyond its original purpose, touching millions who had never seen the two men beyond magazine covers or red carpets. And through that silent moment, Xiao Zhan reminded us all, some of the deepest truths aren't spoken. They're simply lived, when no one's looking. The moment Wang Yibo opened his eyes was quiet. No fanfare, no cinematic swell of music. Just the soft hum of machines and the steady rhythm of breath that filled the room. He blinked slowly, disoriented, his gaze adjusting to the dim light, to the weight of the world pulling him back. And then he saw him, Xiao Zhan, curled beside the hospital bed in a chair far too small, his posture tense even in sleep, his fingers still loosely wrapped around Yibo's hand. For a second, Yibo didn't speak. He simply watched, his eyes tracing the exhaustion etched into Zhan's face, the dark circles, the slight tremble in his shoulders, the way he seemed to be holding everything in. When he finally whispered, "Were you here the whole time?" The words carried more than curiosity. They carried the disbelief of someone who had felt lost in the dark and found, somehow, that someone had lit a candle and waited. Xiao Zhan stirred, startled, then leaned forward, gripping Yibo's hand tighter as if grounding himself in the reality of that voice. "I told you," he said softly, his voice raw, "I wouldn't leave," and he hadn't. Not for a moment. Not through the fear, the long silences, the hours that seemed to stretch into eternity. Yibo's eyes filled with tears, not from pain, but from something deeper. Gratitude, perhaps, or the staggering realization that someone had carried him when he couldn't stand on his own. In that small exchange, so much was said without being spoken. It was more than reunion, it was recognition, of love, of loyalty, of a promise made in darkness and kept until light returned. What lingered after the hospital lights dimmed and the whispers faded wasn't just the memory of 48 sleepless hours. It was something far deeper, something that couldn't be easily explained or dismissed. In a world addicted to noise, spectacle, and fleeting attention, what Xiao Zhan did was almost radical. He stayed. Without cameras, without statements, without expecting recognition, he chose presence over performance. And in doing so, he revealed a kind of strength that's rarely seen and even more rarely understood. The meaning of those 2 days goes far beyond celebrity headlines or fan theories. It lies in the quiet courage to hold someone's hand through the unknown, to carry another person's fear when they're too weak to hold it themselves. Xiao Zhan didn't offer grand gestures. What he gave was far more difficult: time, vulnerability, and unwavering devotion. For many, this story has become more than just about two public figures. It's a mirror, reflecting the kind of loyalty and emotional responsibility we all long for in our lives. It reminds us that love, whether romantic, platonic, or something undefinable, doesn't always announce itself loudly. Sometimes, it's found in the silence between words, in the stillness of waiting, in a hand that never lets go. In a culture quick to question motives and cast doubt, this quiet act of care became a symbol of what it means to truly show up for someone, not just when it's convenient or easy, but when it's hardest. And perhaps that's the most profound part of all, that in a fleeting world, one simple promise kept through the night can echo across continents, hearts, and time. In the quiet aftermath of Wang Yibo's recovery, something unexpected began to unfold. Not in hospital corridors, but in the hearts of millions who had followed the story with bated breath. Across cities and borders, strangers lit candles not for fame, but for faith, in loyalty, in presence, in love that asks for nothing in return. What started as one man's silent vigil became a ripple, turning into something much more enduring. A new tradition, not of celebration, but of remembrance. Fans began gathering on the same night each year, not with noise or spectacle, but with shared silence. Some brought handwritten letters, some shared their own stories of waiting by a bedside, of sitting through the dark with someone they loved. It wasn't just about Xiao Zhan or Wang Yibo anymore. It was about all of us, about how deeply we crave proof that devotion still exists in a world that too often celebrates the loudest voice rather than the quietest strength. In South Korea, Japan, and the US, art exhibits began to feature works inspired by those 48 hours. Paintings of shadowed hospital rooms with figures wrapped in patience and hope. In Indonesia and Thailand, schools used the story in ethics classes to teach compassion and emotional resilience. And online, the hashtag #StayWhenItMatters quietly grew, becoming a touchstone for anyone who had ever felt seen in silence. This wasn't fandom. It was collective memory taking root in something real. A new tradition was born, not one bound by dates, but by meaning. A way to remind each other year after year that sometimes the most powerful love isn't spoken, it's simply shown and remembered. So what was the forbidden pact? It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't loud. It wasn't even spoken in public. It was this: when the world turns away, I'll still be here. And in keeping it, Xiao Zhan redefined what it means to truly love someone, whether as a friend, a soulmate, or something the world doesn't need to label. Loudspeaker, call to action, 8:01, end. If the story moved you, if it reminded you that the quietest love is often the most powerful, then don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe. Red Heart, share this video with someone who's always stayed by your side. Candle, and remember, the strongest bonds don't shout, they whisper through time. Backhand index pointing right. Follow our channel for more stories that speak to the heart. From Asia's brightest stars to moments that unite us all. Thank you for watching. We'll see you at 12:17.